In life, we often face challenges that test our patience, perseverance, and courage. One powerful story that illustrates this is the story of Captain Olivia Carter. In a police force tainted by corruption, Captain Olivia Carter stands alone in the fight for justice. As the only black woman in her department, she faces racism, betrayal, and sabotage at every turn. When a trusted colleague is murdered, Olivia uncovers a dark web of crime that reaches the highest ranks. With danger closing in, she plans a risky counterattack, but can she expose the truth before she becomes the next target? This is not just an ordinary story, it holds valuable lessons that can inspire us in our own journeys. Perhaps after hearing it, you'll see the world from a different perspective. Before we begin, please tap the like button as a way to support this channel so more people can find inspiration from this story. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming inspirational stories. And of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share in the comments, what lesson do you take from this story? Let's inspire each other. Disclaimer. This video is a work of fiction created solely to provide moral lessons, motivation, and inspiration for viewers. All names, characters, events, and incidents in this story are purely fictional and are not intended to offend, attack, or refer to any specific individual or group. Any resemblance to actual names, places, or events is purely coincidental. Hopefully, this story can provide valuable insights and serve as a positive reflection for all of us. Voice of Justice. Against all odds, a black woman stands in a world of prejudice. The sound of the plane's wheels touching the runway echoed throughout the airport. Olivia Carter sat upright in her seat, feeling a slight tension in her chest. She had been transferred to California to take on her new role as chief of police. Despite having served for years in New York, she knew the challenges in this new place would be vastly different. As she stepped off the plane, the warmer California air greeted her. She adjusted her jacket and walked confidently through the arrival hall. She could feel the eyes of people around her, some merely glancing while others stared in a way she didn't like. Olivia retrieved her suitcase and made her way toward the taxi queue. An older man behind her appeared restless. She noticed him glancing at her repeatedly. Just as a taxi stopped right in front of her, the man suddenly stepped forward and placed his bag down first. "Sorry I was here first," he said casually. The taxi driver looked between them. Olivia let out a slow breath and met the man's gaze. "I've been waiting longer," she said calmly. The man scoffed. "You can wait for the next one." The driver hesitated but ultimately let the man take the taxi. Olivia chose not to make a scene and waited for the next one. When another taxi arrived, she got in and gave the driver her hotel address. The driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "First time here?" he asked. "Yes," Olivia replied curtly. "California's a little different from other places," the driver said in a vague tone. Olivia looked out the window, watching the bustling city that was now her new workplace. She could feel it in the air, a challenge that wasn't just about the job but also about the people around her. And this was just the beginning. City lights flickered on as Olivia stepped out of the taxi in front of an upscale restaurant in the heart of downtown. After a long journey, she wanted nothing more than to enjoy a proper meal. The restaurant looked elegant, with large windows showcasing the luxurious atmosphere inside. As soon as Olivia pushed open the door, the sound of conversations and the clinking of glasses filled her ears. Well-dressed patrons sat at candlelit tables, savoring their meals. She stepped in confidently, but almost instantly the energy in the room shifted. A few heads turned in her direction. Conversations momentarily paused before resuming. A waiter approached her. A young man in a crisp white uniform eyed her with hesitation. "Sorry, we're fully booked tonight," he said quickly. Olivia glanced around. She immediately spotted at least 3 empty tables. Keeping her expression neutral, she turned back to the waiter. "I can wait," she replied calmly. The waiter gave a small, polite smile, but there was something insincere about it. "Unfortunately, those tables have already been reserved." Just then, a man in an expensive suit entered behind her. Before he could even ask, another waiter greeted him warmly and guided him to one of the so-called reserved tables. Olivia silently observed the interaction. "So, all the tables are taken?" she asked again, this time with a sharper tone. The waiter hesitated, but before he could respond, an older man, likely the restaurant manager, approached them. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his gaze firm as he looked directly at Olivia. "No problem. I just want to have dinner," she said evenly. The manager gave a thin smile, but there was something condescending in his voice as he spoke. Our restaurant is quite expensive. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable somewhere else." His words were sharper than they needed to be. Olivia understood exactly what he was implying. She stared at him for a moment, debating whether to challenge him or walk away. But she had nothing to prove to them. Keeping her composure, she gave a small nod. "Thank you for the information," she said before turning and walking out. The night air felt colder than before. Olivia paused on the sidewalk, catching her reflection in the restaurant's window. Inside, people continued their meals as if nothing had happened. She had faced this kind of treatment before. But no matter how many times it happened, it always lit a small fire inside her. Without another word, Olivia walked away, searching for another place to eat. But she knew one thing. This wouldn't be the last time she faced something like this in this city. The cool air from the AC greeted Olivia as she stepped into the hotel lobby. High ceilings adorned with sparkling chandeliers added to the luxurious atmosphere. A faint scent of fresh flowers lingered in the air, coming from the reception desk, where a young woman in a crisp uniform stood behind the marble counter. Olivia walked up to the desk with confidence. She had made her reservation well in advance. There was no reason for any issues. "Good evening. I'd like to check in." "The reservation is under Olivia Carter," she said, handing over her ID. The receptionist took the ID, but as she read the name, her expression subtly shifted. She glanced at Olivia briefly before turning back to the computer screen, pretending to search for something. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, too slowly for what should have been a simple task. She murmured softly. "I'm sorry, but I don't see a reservation under this name." Olivia exhaled slowly. She had a feeling this would happen. "I booked the room a week ago. Please check again," she said patiently. The receptionist hesitated before typing again, this time with a slightly awkward expression. A man in a black suit, probably the manager, walked over, noticing the exchange. "Is there a problem?" he asked, casting Olivia a scrutinizing look. "I can't find a reservation under her name," the receptionist replied. The manager crossed his arms. "Are you sure you booked at this hotel?" he asked, his tone laced with skepticism. Olivia met his gaze without flinching. "I'm sure," she said coldly. The manager let out a slow breath. "There might have been a system error. But unfortunately we're fully booked for the night." Olivia pressed her tongue against the roof of her mouth, holding back the irritation rising inside her. She pulled out her phone and quickly searched for the confirmation email from the hotel. Without saying a word, she turned her screen toward them, displaying clear proof of her reservation, with her name prominently listed. The receptionist swallowed hard. The manager, who had been so confident just moments ago, suddenly looked uncomfortable. "Oh, it seems there was a mistake in our records," he stammered. "We'll prepare your room immediately." "I hope so," Olivia said flatly. Within minutes, the key card was in her hand. But the experience left something lingering in her mind. It wasn't about the hotel room they had nearly denied her. It wasn't about the lie they had almost used to turn her away. It was the realization that even in a place of luxury, behind polite smiles and well-mannered words, prejudice still lurked. Olivia gripped the key card tightly and walked toward the elevator. She was exhausted for the night, but she knew this was far from over. The morning sun shone brightly over California, but Olivia still felt the weight of last night's events lingering in her chest. Sitting in the hotel lobby, she sipped her coffee slowly, ignoring the subtle glances she occasionally received. Today, before attending her first official meeting at the police department, she decided to take a walk, soak in the city's atmosphere, and perhaps buy something as a symbol of her new beginning. A jewelry store at the end of the street caught her attention. Its elegant exterior and crystal-clear glass displays showcased luxurious pieces, exuding exclusivity. Olivia stepped inside with quiet confidence. The soft chime of a bell announced her entrance. A woman behind the glass display counter lifted her gaze, her eyes scanning Olivia from head to toe. A flicker of something passed across her face, something Olivia had seen too many times before. Ignoring it, Olivia turned her attention to the shimmering pieces in the glass cases. Diamond necklaces, white gold rings, bracelets encrusted with gemstones, all glistened under the store's bright lighting. "May I help you?" the woman's voice rang out, lacking warmth. "I'm just looking for now," Olivia replied, keeping her gaze on the jewelry. Seconds passed, but Olivia could feel the woman's eyes still fixed on her, watching her more closely than necessary. As Olivia placed a finger lightly on the glass, admiring a particularly stunning diamond ring, the store's security alarm suddenly blared. All heads in the boutique snapped toward her. The saleswoman immediately stepped back, her expression shifting to one of suspicion. "I'm sorry, but I must ask you not to touch anything," she said coldly. Olivia frowned. "What do you mean?" A large man, likely the store's security guard, approached with a firm stance. "Please return the item you took." Olivia raised both hands, showing that she wasn't holding anything. "I haven't even touched a single piece of jewelry," she said calmly, though her eyes held a sharp intensity. The saleswoman remained unconvinced. "We have strict security procedures. If you don't mind, we'd like you to stay here until the police arrive." Whispers spread throughout the store. An elderly woman cast Olivia a disgusted look. A man near the entrance shook his head slightly. Olivia felt her blood begin to simmer, but she controlled it. She knew exactly what was happening. Taking a slow breath, she said, "Go ahead. Call the police." The saleswoman hesitated, surprised by Olivia's composure, but still turned to make the call. Olivia stood tall in the center of the store as the weight of judgmental stares bore down on her. She didn't know which officers would respond to the call. But one thing was certain, they were in for a shock when they found out who she really was. The sound of sirens grew louder. Within minutes, a patrol car screeched to a halt in front of the jewelry store. Two officers stepped out swiftly. One of them, a tall man with a hardened face that seemed accustomed to dealing with trouble, entered the boutique without hesitation. "What happened?" he asked the store clerk. The woman who had made the call immediately pointed at Olivia. This woman was acting suspiciously. The store alarm went off while she was near the display case. The officer turned to Olivia, his expression instantly turning cold. He walked toward her with heavy steps, his gaze filled with judgment. "Show me your hands," he commanded. Olivia remained standing tall, unmoving. "I didn't take anything." "We'll determine that ourselves," he replied, his voice firmer this time. Without warning, the officer grabbed Olivia's wrist, attempting to handcuff her. That was a grave mistake. In one swift motion, Olivia deflected his hand, pivoted her body, and locked the officer's arm in a move she had mastered over the years. The officer gasped, trying to resist, but Olivia was faster. Within seconds, she had turned the situation around. Silence fell over the room. The store clerk gawked, her mouth slightly open. The security guard took an instinctive step back. The second officer, just now realizing what had happened, reached for his radio. "We need backup." "Stop," Olivia cut in, her voice calm but sharp. With her free hand, she reached inside her jacket and pulled out a badge, the very symbol of her authority. Under the bright store lights, the words on the badge gleamed unmistakably. "Chief of Police, California, Olivia Carter." The officer trapped in her hold widened his eyes. The second officer, still gripping his radio, hesitated. The store clerk covered her mouth, her face turning pale. Olivia slowly released her grip, allowing the officer to step back, his face now filled with embarrassment. "It was just a misunderstanding," he muttered. Olivia tucked her badge back into her jacket and looked at each of them one by one. "A misunderstanding?" she repeated, her voice low and full of meaning. No one dared to respond. Olivia inhaled deeply, then stepped forward. "I'll be leaving now," she said firmly. "And I suggest you all think twice before judging someone based on the color of their skin." No one moved to stop her. As Olivia walked out of the boutique, the afternoon air felt heavier. She knew this wasn't the end. But for today at least she had reminded them that the world was changing. And she was here to make sure it did. The California sky was a perfect shade of blue, but in Olivia's heart the storm hadn't passed. She strolled down the sidewalk, letting the cool breeze brush against her face. The jewelry store she had just left felt far behind, but the emotions from it still lingered. She pulled out her phone and typed a quick message to her assistant at the police department. "Schedule a meeting with all officers this afternoon. I want to get to know our team better." After sending the message, Olivia caught her reflection in the window of a small coffee shop. She hesitated for a moment, then decided to step inside. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. Unlike the places she had visited earlier, this cafe had a much more relaxed atmosphere. There were no suspicious stares, no cold glares. Just people working on their laptops or chatting with friends. She walked to the counter and offered a small smile to the barista. "One black coffee," she said. The barista, a young man in a brown apron, smiled back. "Of course. Sugar or milk?" Olivia shook her head. "Just black." A few minutes later, she took her coffee and settled by the window. For the first time since arriving in this city, she felt a moment of peace. But that peace didn't last long. As she sipped her coffee, a man hurriedly entered the cafe. Olivia barely noticed him until he approached the counter in a hushed voice. "There are cops outside," he said to the barista. The barista frowned. "Cops? Why?" The man shrugged. "I don't know. They look like they're searching for someone." Olivia's heartbeat quickened slightly. She slowly set down her coffee and glanced at the window's reflection. Two police officers stood on the sidewalk, speaking into their radios. Then one of them turned toward the cafe. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Olivia knew this wasn't a coincidence. They were here for her. Olivia remained still, her hands wrapped around the warm coffee cup. The two officers outside exchanged a few words before one of them made his way toward the entrance. A soft chime rang as the door opened. The cafe, once filled with casual chatter, fell into an uneasy silence. It was as if everyone inside could sense the tension that had just entered the room. The officer was a stocky man in his 40s with a sharp, watchful gaze. Behind him, his younger partner lingered outside, observing. Olivia didn't move as the man approached her table. "Olivia Carter?" he asked, his voice deep and measured. She raised an eyebrow but took another slow sip of her coffee before answering. "Yes." The officer took a breath, then pulled a folded paper from his pocket and placed it on the table in front of her. "We received a report about an incident at the jewelry store earlier," he said. "Some parties feel that your actions were excessive." Olivia set her cup down carefully and met his gaze with an unreadable expression. "Excessive?" she echoed. The officer crossed his arms. "You restrained an officer in public. That could be considered resisting law enforcement." The cafe grew even quieter. The barista, once friendly, now pretended to be busy, but it was clear he was listening. Other customers stole glances, their curiosity evident. Olivia exhaled slowly. She knew exactly what this was. This wasn't about the jewelry store. It was a message. A silent warning from those who didn't like the idea of her being here. She picked up the paper and skimmed it briefly. It wasn't an official summons, just an incident report. A subtle threat disguised as protocol. Then she looked up at the officer and gave a small, knowing smile. "If there's an issue with how I handled the situation," she said calmly, "perhaps we should discuss it at my office. I'm sure you know where to find it." The officer clenched his jaw slightly. For a moment, Olivia saw something in his eyes, disdain but also hesitation. Then he gave a slow nod. "We're just doing our job." Olivia's smile didn't fade. "Good. Because so am I." The officer didn't reply. He gave her one last look before turning and walking toward the door. As soon as he stepped outside, the noise in the cafe gradually returned. Some people still eyed Olivia curiously. Others pretended not to care. Olivia lifted her coffee and took another sip. She had only just arrived in this city, and they were already trying to intimidate her. They had no idea who they were dealing with, but they were about to find out. That afternoon, Olivia arrived at the police headquarters with a firm stride. The large building, with its glass walls and the emblem of the California Police Department, stood prominently at the entrance. As she stepped inside, several officers engaged in conversation immediately fell silent, turning to look at her with varying expressions. Some were merely curious, some seemed uncertain, and others were clearly displeased by her presence. Olivia was used to this. Her assistant, a young man named Daniel, quickly approached her. "Everyone is gathered in the conference room, Captain," he said respectfully. Olivia nodded. "Good. Let's begin." She walked down the long corridor toward the main conference room. Inside, dozens of officers were already seated, some with their arms crossed, others simply waiting with blank expressions. Among them, Olivia immediately recognized the two officers who had confronted her at the coffee shop earlier. She stepped to the front of the room, placed her hands on the long table, and swept her gaze over the group. "My name is Olivia Carter," she stated firmly. "As of today, I am your new police captain." There were no claps, no warm welcomes. Olivia smirked slightly. She expected this. "I know some of you may not be happy about my presence," she continued. "Maybe some of you think I don't belong here, that I can't lead you." She folded her arms, letting her words hang in the air before continuing. "But I don't care about your personal opinions. I am here for one reason, to ensure that the law is enforced fairly, not based on skin color, social status, or political connections." A man with graying hair in the corner, Lieutenant Briggs, one of the senior officers, scoffed. "Nice words, Captain. But around here we have our own way of doing things." Olivia locked eyes with him. "Then maybe it's time that way changes." Briggs held her gaze but said nothing. "Every officer here will be held accountable for their actions," Olivia continued. "I don't care how long you've worked here. I don't care what political ties you have or what protection you enjoyed under the previous leadership. If anyone breaks the law, they will face the consequences." Silence filled the room. Some officers looked uncomfortable, but no one dared to challenge her outright. Olivia adjusted her blazer and said, "From now on, we operate with professionalism. No exceptions." She scanned the room one last time before giving a small nod. "That's all for today. Return to your duties." The officers began rising from their seats, some whispering among themselves. As Olivia turned toward the door, a voice called out behind her, "Captain Carter." Olivia turned. It was the officer who had tried to arrest her at the jewelry store earlier. "I need to speak with you privately," he said, his expression serious. Olivia studied him for a moment before nodding. "All right, let's talk." She wanted to hear what he had to say, and whether this was just the beginning of more trouble in this city. Olivia followed the officer out of the conference room and into her office, which still felt unfamiliar. The room was simple, a large desk, an empty bookshelf, and a black leather chair behind it. The officer, whom Olivia now knew as Officer Mitchell, shut the door behind them. His expression was serious, as if something far more important than the jewelry store incident was on his mind. "There's something you wanted to talk about, Mitchell?" Olivia asked, leaning against her desk with her arms crossed. Mitchell nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. "I want to apologize for what happened at the jewelry store." Olivia narrowed her eyes. "Apologize for trying to arrest me, or apologize because you found out who I am?" Mitchell exhaled and met her gaze honestly. "I won't lie. I'm used to a different way of doing things in this city, but I'm not blind. I know something is wrong in this department." Olivia stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. "There are people here who won't like you," Mitchell said quietly. "And it's not just because of your skin color. They've been comfortable running things their way for years, and your arrival is a threat." Olivia watched him closely, trying to gauge his sincerity. "What do you know?" she finally asked. Mitchell glanced toward the door, ensuring no one was listening. "Some officers have ties to certain groups. I can't say much yet, but if you're serious about cleaning up this place, you need to be careful." Olivia nodded slightly. She had suspected that corruption and discrimination in the city ran deeper than just unfair treatment at restaurants or stores. "Are you willing to help me?" she asked. Mitchell hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah. I just want to work in an honest department." A small smile tugged at Olivia's lips. "Good. Then we start here." Mitchell looked somewhat relieved. "Thank you, Captain." But before he could say anything else, a sharp knock on the door interrupted them. Daniel, her assistant, stepped in with a tense expression. "Captain, you need to see this," he said, handing her an envelope. Olivia carefully opened it. Inside were photographs, pictures of her at the jewelry store incident, talking to officers at the coffee shop, even entering the police headquarters earlier that day. At the bottom, a single sentence was scrawled in red ink. "You are not welcome here." Olivia clenched her jaw. This was just the beginning. Olivia stared at the photos with a neutral expression, but inside, she knew this was a clear message. Someone was watching her, and they wanted her to know she wasn't wanted here. Daniel and Mitchell waited for her reaction. Daniel looked anxious, while Mitchell simply observed with a clenched jaw. "Who sent this?" Olivia asked, though she knew there wouldn't be an immediate answer. Daniel shook his head. "No sender name. The envelope was left at the reception desk. No one knows who dropped it off." Mitchell picked up one of the photos, inspecting it closely. "Whoever took these was close enough to get clear shots without being noticed. This isn't just an idle threat. They want you to feel unsafe." Olivia exhaled softly, setting the photos down on her desk. "I'm used to threats like these." "But this isn't a city you should take lightly, Captain," Mitchell warned. "There are groups here that won't hesitate to go beyond just sending threats." Daniel looked at Olivia with concern. "Captain, do you want me to arrange extra security?" Olivia shook her head. "No need. That would only show them they've succeeded in scaring me." She turned to both of them, her eyes sharp. "But I do want to know who's behind this. Daniel, have our IT team trace the origin of these photos. See if there's any digital footprint." Daniel nodded quickly and rushed out to carry out her orders. Olivia then turned to Mitchell. "Earlier you mentioned officers with ties to certain groups. Does that mean I should be wary of people inside this department?" Mitchell hesitated briefly before nodding. "I can't prove anything yet, but there are a few names to keep an eye on." Olivia leaned back in her chair. This was worse than she thought. If the threat came from within the department, she needed to be even more careful. Suddenly her office phone rang. Olivia picked it up. "Captain Carter," she said, her tone firm. On the other end, a man's voice responded. It was deep, slow, relishing every word. "You've made a lot of enemies in this place, Captain. I hope you know what you're doing." Click. The line went dead before Olivia could respond. She slowly set the phone down and looked at Mitchell. "They're not just watching me," she said quietly. "They want me to know they're everywhere." Mitchell's fists clenched. "So what's our next move?" A slow, determined smile formed on Olivia's lips. "We're not playing defense," she said, grabbing her jacket. "We're going on the offensive." That night, Olivia stood in front of a large whiteboard in her office. Pinned across it were several photos and notes, forming a pattern that was still unclear. Mitchell stood in the corner of the room with his arms crossed, while Daniel had just returned from the IT team, holding a report in his hands. "I had the team analyze the metadata of these photos," Daniel said, placing several sheets of paper on the desk. "They were taken with a professional camera, not a phone. And based on the lighting and angles, the culprit likely used a long-range lens." "So this isn't amateur work," Mitchell muttered. Olivia nodded. "They're serious." She pointed at the photos taken during the jewelry store incident. "Whoever this is has been tracking me since I arrived in this city." Daniel continued, "We also tried tracing the phone that called you earlier. It was from a burner phone, no traceable data." Olivia wasn't surprised. They know how to play this game. Mitchell stepped closer, his eyes locked on the photos. "If we want to find out who they are, we need to dig deeper. I have a few names of officers who might be connected to certain groups." "What kind of groups?" Olivia asked. Mitchell grabbed a marker and wrote a name on the board. "The Brotherhood." Olivia stared at the words without expression. She had heard of them before, a secret network of police officers and public figures operating from the shadows. They covered up crimes for their own, protected people who should have been behind bars, and ensured no outsiders disrupted their system. "Are you sure they're the ones targeting me?" Olivia asked. Mitchell nodded. "I don't have concrete proof, but I've been suspicious of several senior officers. Lieutenant Briggs is one of them." That didn't surprise Olivia. From the moment she met Briggs, she could feel his hostility. "Then we need evidence," she said. She turned to Daniel. "Is there any way to infiltrate their internal communication systems?" Daniel exhaled. "I can try, but it's risky. If they realize we're watching, they'll wipe everything clean." "Do it carefully," Olivia instructed. Mitchell looked at her warily. "Captain, you realize this could turn into an open war?" Olivia gave a small smile. "They declared war first. I'm just making sure we don't lose." Mitchell let out a slow breath. "All right. I'll start looking into anyone connected to Briggs. Let's see how deep this network goes." Olivia nodded. "From now on we move carefully. They're watching us, but we're going to make them believe they're still in control of this game." Her gaze fell to the threatening photos on her desk. They wanted her gone. But the ones who would be leaving were them. That morning, Olivia arrived at the station earlier than usual. The air was crisp, the streets still quiet. But something had been bothering her since last night, a feeling that she was being watched. As soon as she entered her office, Daniel was already waiting, his face tense. "I found something," he said without preamble, handing her a tablet. On the screen was an encrypted email that his team had managed to decode. Olivia read the message. "We need to make sure she doesn't last long. If she digs any deeper, we move to the next step." The sender was anonymous, but the recipient's name was clear: Lieutenant Briggs. Olivia set the tablet down, her jaw tightening. "They're planning something," she said quietly. Mitchell walked in a moment later, holding a file. "I talked to some of the younger officers. A lot of them don't like you, Captain, but only a handful are bold enough to act. And Briggs is one of them," Olivia added. Mitchell nodded. "I also heard whispers about secret meetings among some of the older officers. But no one's willing to say much." Olivia thought fast. "Then we'll make them talk." Daniel and Mitchell exchanged confused looks. "We set a trap," she continued. "I need to know how far they're willing to go." Mitchell raised an eyebrow. "What's your plan?" A small smirk played on Olivia's lips. "I'll make them believe I found something that could destroy them." She picked up her phone and started typing a message. "I have evidence. Meet me tonight at a secure location. Come alone." She sent it to an officer she suspected was close to the network. Daniel swallowed. "Captain, this is dangerous." Olivia met his eyes, unwavering. "That's the point." Mitchell sighed. "Fine. I'll set up a surveillance team. But you're not going in alone." Olivia gave a faint smile. "I never go in alone." Her eyes returned to the photos of the threats against her. Tonight they would think they were setting her up. But in reality she was setting them up. That night, Olivia sat in her car, staring at the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The place was old and desolate, the streetlights dim, the wind howling through broken walls. She checked her watch. 11:45 p.m. Daniel and Mitchell were stationed nearby, watching from a distance with a small team, ready to intervene if things went south. A few minutes later, another car pulled up. Olivia recognized it immediately. It belonged to Sergeant Rick Nolan, one of the officers often seen with Lieutenant Briggs. The car came to a stop and a man stepped out. Nolan walked casually, but his eyes were scanning the area. Olivia knew he hadn't come alone. She stepped out of her car, standing firm under the dim light. "You alone?" Nolan asked, his voice low and cautious. Olivia nodded. "I don't need backup for this." Nolan smirked. "Really? You expect me to believe that?" Olivia crossed her arms. "I know you're involved. I know there's a network inside the department trying to get rid of me." Nolan sighed as if he was tired of the charade. "And if that's true?" Olivia's lips curled slightly. "Then you'd better listen carefully." She reached into her pocket, pulled out a flash drive and held it up. "This contains recordings that could take all of you down," she said. "I could go public with it, or we can talk." Nolan's eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." Olivia held his gaze. "Try me." Silence. Then footsteps. She didn't turn around, but she knew. They had brought more men. Nolan smirked. "You're right, Captain. This isn't just about you." From the shadows, more men stepped out. 2 of them were still in uniform. Olivia remained unfazed. Nolan took a step closer. "You don't belong here. And tonight, I'm going to make sure you understand that." He lifted a hand, signaling his men. But before they could move, a gunshot echoed through the air. Nolan jerked, eyes widening as he looked around in alarm. From the darkness, Mitchell and his team emerged, weapons drawn. Daniel's voice rang through a loudspeaker. "Police, drop your weapons and put your hands up." Nolan's face drained of color. Olivia smiled coldly. "I never come alone." Nolan reached for his gun. But Olivia was faster. She kicked it from his grip, sending him stumbling back. In seconds, Mitchell's team swarmed in, taking down the other officers. Breathing heavily, Nolan looked up at Olivia in rage. "You think you can outplay us?" he growled. Olivia knelt beside him, her voice a whisper. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Mitchell cuffed Nolan. "We have enough evidence to bring them all down." Olivia tossed the flash drive onto the ground. Nolan stared at it in confusion. "It's empty," she said, smirking. "But now I have a real recording of you admitting everything." Nolan's face twisted in horror. Tonight wasn't Olivia's downfall. Tonight was the beginning of theirs. The following morning, news of Sergeant Nolan's arrest, along with several other officers, spread like wildfire. The police station buzzed with hushed whispers and knowing glances. Some officers looked uneasy, while others pretended to know nothing. Olivia walked down the hallway with her head held high, her expression calm despite the tension hanging in the air. By the time she reached her office, Daniel and Mitchell were already waiting. "This news is spreading faster than I expected," Daniel said, placing a tablet on her desk. "Some media outlets are already asking questions. They want to know why officers are being arrested by their own colleagues." Mitchell leaned against the wall. "And I'm sure Briggs won't sit still." Olivia unfolded her arms and took a seat. "That's exactly what we want." Daniel gave her a wary look. "Captain, are you really trying to lure him out?" Olivia held his gaze. "The Brotherhood has felt untouchable for too long. We need the big fish, not just pawns like Nolan." Mitchell nodded. "Briggs must be panicking. If Nolan talks, everything could collapse." "The problem is," Daniel added, "how do we make sure Nolan talks? He could stay quiet or even get protection from people inside." A small smile crossed Olivia's lips. "He won't have a choice." She picked up her phone and typed a message. "Send the recording to the DA's office. Make sure Nolan knows his only way out is to cooperate." Daniel read the message and nodded. "All right, I'll take care of it." Mitchell crossed his arms. "And in the meantime?" Olivia's expression hardened. "We prepare. Because if Briggs feels threatened, he'll make his next move soon." That afternoon, as Olivia reviewed reports at her desk, her office door swung open without a knock. Lieutenant Briggs stood in the doorway, his face tight with restrained anger. "We need to talk," he said coldly. Olivia raised an eyebrow but remained seated. "Of course. Come in." Briggs stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. He walked forward, planting both hands firmly on her desk. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His voice was low, threatening. "You have no idea what you're messing with, Captain." Olivia met his gaze, unshaken. "On the contrary, I know exactly what I'm doing." Briggs narrowed his eyes. "Do you really think you can change the system? That you can take down something that existed long before you set foot in this city?" A small, knowing smile touched Olivia's lips. "I don't need to take down the whole system, Briggs. I just need to make sure people like you don't feel invincible anymore." Briggs let out a slow breath, then chuckled darkly. "You know, I was actually going to let you walk away. I could have let you give up like so many others. But instead you chose the hard way." Olivia remained silent, waiting. Briggs leaned in closer. "So here's my warning. Stop now or you won't like what happens next." Silence hung in the air. Then Olivia slowly rose to her feet, locking eyes with him. "I've been threatened more times than I can count," she said, her voice low but sharp. "And do you know what happens to the people who try to stop me?" Briggs held his breath. Olivia's cold smile returned. "They fall. One by one." Briggs' eyes burned with anger. But before he could respond, Olivia spoke again. "You can leave now, Lieutenant," she said calmly. "Or should I have someone escort you out?" Briggs clenched his jaw. He stared at her for a moment longer before turning on his heel and walking out with heavy steps. As the door shut behind him, Olivia took a deep breath. The real fight had just begun. That night, Olivia drove alone. She needed fresh air, a moment to think without interruptions. But deep down, she knew this fight wasn't over. Briggs wasn't the type to back down just because of sharp words. Her phone buzzed on the dashboard. A message from an unknown number. "Leave while you still can. This opportunity won't come twice." Olivia smirked. Another warning. She typed a response. "I'm not going anywhere." Then she put the phone down and kept driving. But as she approached an empty intersection, a black SUV sped toward her, headlights off. Instinct kicked in. Olivia yanked the steering wheel, tires screeching as she narrowly avoided a collision. The SUV passed so close she could hear the roar of its engine. Her pulse pounded. She glanced at the rearview mirror, watching the SUV come to a stop in the distance. Someone wasn't just sending messages anymore. They were acting on them. Olivia pressed the gas, speeding toward the police station. This wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration of war. The moment she arrived at headquarters, she found Mitchell and Daniel waiting. "I was nearly run off the road," she said without preamble. Mitchell shot to his feet. "Are you sure it wasn't just some reckless driver?" Olivia gave him a sharp look. "They don't make mistakes. That was a message." Daniel immediately pulled out his phone. "I can try tracking the vehicle. There are traffic cameras along that road." "Do it," Olivia ordered. Mitchell exhaled heavily. "This is getting more dangerous, Captain." Olivia nodded. "And I'm not backing down." Mitchell held her gaze, then nodded firmly. "Then let's make sure they know we're not backing down either." The next day, as Olivia walked into the station, all eyes were on her. The whispers had grown louder. Then, from across the room, Lieutenant Briggs emerged from the back offices. He strode toward her with confidence, stopping just inches away. "I need to speak with you now," he said. Olivia glanced around. Everyone was watching. She smiled faintly. "Step into my office, Lieutenant." They walked side by side, tension thick between them. The moment the door closed behind them, Briggs glared at her. "You just don't know when to quit, do you?" he murmured, his voice laced with warning. Olivia leaned against her desk. "Did you really think I'd back down just because of a little car stunt last night?" Briggs chuckled softly. "Ah, so you figured that out?" "There's a lot I've figured out," Olivia replied coolly. Briggs' eyes darkened. "Listen, I tried to be reasonable. I tried to give you a chance to walk away with dignity. But now, you're forcing me to handle this the hard way." Olivia's expression didn't waver. "And you're forcing me to make sure you get exactly what you deserve." Briggs inhaled sharply, then said, "Fine. But don't blame me when you regret it." He turned and stormed out, leaving Olivia standing there, unmoved. The second the door closed, she picked up her phone and sent a message to Daniel. "Start the next phase. We take them down faster than they expect." The final battle was approaching. Olivia stood in front of the strategy board in the meeting room, her gaze sharp as she looked at Daniel, Mitchell, and a few of her most trusted team members. "We can't afford to wait any longer," she said firmly. "Briggs has made it clear that he's willing to do whatever it takes to get rid of me. Now we strike first." Daniel nodded, opening the file in front of him. I reviewed the traffic footage from last night's incident. That black SUV belongs to someone named Victor Hayes. Who is he? Mitchell asked. A hired thug, Daniel replied. He's not a cop, but he has plenty of connections within the force. He's often done dirty work for the Brotherhood. Olivia smirked. So now they're outsourcing? Daniel continued. What's more interesting, I found something bigger. Nolan finally talked. Silence filled the room. Mitchell's eyes widened. You're serious? Daniel tossed the document onto the table. He gave us names. Besides Briggs, several high-ranking officers are involved in this network. And worse, they have ties to a drug cartel. Olivia crossed her arms. I suspected there was something bigger behind all of this. Mitchell let out a slow breath. If this is true, then we're not just dealing with corrupt cops. We're up against a much larger criminal organization. Daniel looked at Olivia. What's the plan? Olivia stepped toward the strategy board and tapped it with her finger. We take them down in 2 steps. She wrote 2 words in bold letters. Lure them out. Record and capture. We make Briggs think he's still in control, Olivia explained. Let him believe I'm finally backing off. I'll set up a meeting with him. Mitchell immediately objected. Wait, you're going to meet him face to face? That's too risky. Olivia met his gaze. That's exactly why he'll believe it. Daniel nodded, catching on. And while he talks, we record everything. A faint smile played on Olivia's lips. Exactly. I want a direct confession. And once we have it, we'll send everything to the FBI and the media at the same time. We leave them nowhere to hide. Mitchell exhaled. You really love playing with fire. Olivia's eyes glinted with determination. I'm not playing. I'm burning them down. Nightfall, secret meeting location. Olivia sat inside her car, staring at the abandoned warehouse chosen as the meeting spot. Daniel's voice crackled through her earpiece. We're in position. The team is surrounding the area. As soon as we have enough evidence, we move in. Understood, Olivia replied. In the distance, another vehicle arrived. Briggs stepped out, flanked by 2 men, one of them being Victor Hayes, the man who had tried to kill her the night before. Olivia exited her car, walking forward with confidence. I thought you'd learn to stay out of things, Briggs sneered. Olivia simply shrugged. I'm not the type to give up easily. Briggs narrowed his eyes. Then why are you here? Olivia held his gaze. I want to settle this. I want to hear it from you. What do you really want? Briggs let out a low chuckle. What do I want? Simple, Captain. I want things to stay the way they are, without outsiders like you messing them up. Olivia remained silent, letting him talk. You won't win, Briggs continued. You think taking down Nolan did anything? He's a nobody. The Brotherhood is much bigger than you realize. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You know how many officers work for us? How many just look the other way? Olivia stood firm. And how many are too afraid to speak up because of you? Briggs smirked. More than you think. Then he patted Victor on the shoulder. And if you keep being stubborn, Briggs' gaze darkened. You know what happens to people who go against us. Victor reached inside his jacket, pulling out a gun. But before he could act, drop your weapon and put your hands up. Daniel's voice boomed from the loudspeakers. Floodlights flared on from all directions. Olivia's team emerged from the shadows, weapons drawn. Briggs' eyes went wide with shock. Olivia smirked. You're right, Briggs. I didn't know how many officers worked for you. She stepped closer. But now I know one thing. Briggs held his breath. Olivia patted her pocket. Inside, the recorder was still running. Now I have proof. Mitchell moved in, cuffing Briggs while the rest of the team arrested Victor and the other man. Briggs snarled. You won't catch them all. There are more of us out there. Olivia looked at him coldly. You're right. She leaned in and whispered into his ear. But I'll find them. One by one. Briggs struggled as Mitchell tightened the cuffs around his wrists. His eyes burned with rage, but the smug confidence was gone. Victor Hayes and the other man were also secured. Olivia stood tall, watching as the game finally turned against them. Daniel approached, holding the recorder Olivia had used. This will be all over the news by morning. Olivia took the device and secured it. Make sure no one can touch it. I want this in the hands of the FBI and the media at the same time. Mitchell shoved Briggs toward a patrol car, but the man resisted. You think this is over? He shouted. I'm not alone. Even after I'm gone, others will carry on what we built. Olivia stepped forward, staring him down. And I'll be here to make sure they fail. Briggs gritted his teeth, but this time there was no comeback. Mitchell pushed him into the car and slammed the door shut. Daniel turned to Olivia. "You think this is enough?" Olivia took a deep breath. Briggs was just one piece of this system. But with his confession and Nolan's statements, we can dig deeper. We're not just taking on corrupt cops anymore, we've stepped into a bigger war. Daniel nodded. "So what's next?" Olivia gazed into the night. "We make sure they have nowhere left to run. And we make sure justice speaks." The next morning, police headquarters. News of Lieutenant Briggs' arrest dominated every television screen. Police lieutenant involved in corruption and organized crime. Leaked audio exposes officers' ties to criminal organizations. Inside the briefing room, Olivia watched the live press conference. The district attorney stood at the podium, announcing that further investigations were underway following Briggs and Nolan's confessions. Daniel smirked. "We just shook the entire system." Mitchell leaned back in his chair. "That also means we'll face more resistance." Olivia stared at the screen, her resolve unwavering. "We've come too far to back down now," she said firmly. "And I won't stop until this city is clean." Mitchell nodded. "Then let's finish what we started." Outside the building, the morning sun shone brightly, as if signaling the start of a new era. But Olivia knew, this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. The end. 5 moral lessons from Captain Olivia Carter's story. 1. Stand for justice no matter the cost. Olivia Carter never backed down, even when facing powerful enemies. True justice requires courage and persistence. 2. Integrity over corruption. In a world filled with corruption, staying honest and fighting for the truth is the most powerful weapon. 3. Resilience against discrimination. Despite facing racism and prejudice, Olivia proved that skill, intelligence, and determination matter more than societal bias. 4. Expose the truth to create change. Silence allows corruption to grow. Olivia's fight shows that uncovering the truth can shake even the most powerful systems. 5. Teamwork and loyalty matter. Olivia didn't fight alone. Her loyal team proved that trust and unity are essential in any battle against injustice. These messages can inspire anyone to stand up against injustice in the real world.